AU5, welcome to the Underground Society podcast.
What's up, Justin?
Because you're such a technical producer, was it easier or harder for you to create a fan base?
It was a frustrating thing for a bit. Illenium, for instance, he first started making music and I would share my feedback and thoughts on the stuff that he was making. And then bam, he's like one of the biggest guys just crushing it.
What's your opinion on what people like to call clout chasing?
It's something that I think is distasteful. Gross. I kind of see it as like prostitution. Gross. We don't need any more of that.
COVID, since you do have different revenues and strong revenue streams set up, were you financially okay during that time?
Yeah, I was totally fine. I was gonna have a tour with Chime, and I was like really anxious about doing it because I was like, this world is becoming biologically toxic. It wasn't until I accepted my fate and started focusing on being a person more than obsessing over my identity as an artist. Today, I actually did this breathwork video seminar that was like DMT breakthrough level intensity. So I feel amazing because of that.
Well, thanks for doing that before the interview.
I'm so glad it timed out.
AU5, welcome to the Underground Society podcast, man. How are you?
What's up, Justin? I am great. I am feeling good.
It is an honor to have you here. I've been a fan of your music for a long time, so thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I figured it's a good time to, talk about stuff and myself.
Absolutely. I know you just had a new song released on Subsidia. It was a collab with someone, right?
It was. My buddy Low Maximus. It's a song called Save Our Souls. Thank you. Yeah, we wanted to do something kind of like totally different than the usual. It started off just like this idea of, it was his idea. His name is Brandon, Low Maximus. He's always like just has brilliant ideas to like put to the test in mind. And I'm just like, fuck yeah. So he was like, what if we made a song from the Morse code rhythm, SOS, the SOS Morse code rhythm.
Oh, shit.
And so we hung out and we were just experimenting with it. And we were like, dude, that's actually sick. Like, that's a cool triplet flow. Let's see where that goes. And then it turned into like this like alien sci-fi horror, like cinematic thing. And we just went with it. And that's the cool thing is like when we're in the studio just flowing, like just go with it. It's like, there's no room, when it's fun like that and we're flowing, there's no room to really think about like, oh, what are people going to think? Or like, what is this? There's really no room to like overly identify with it or like bring your identity into the mix. And that's what I really love about producing and collaborating particularly is like, I can't make a good song if I'm just distracted by like the goal of the song. Like, what is this going to turn into? Or what label is this going to fit into? It's like, I don't want any of that. It's just noise that gums up the flow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I find that even just with podcasting, the creative side of this, obviously it's just at the end of the day, it's just a conversation, but there's a lot of creativity that goes into it as well. And I also find I struggle with that all the time with just like comparing myself to others and, what are other people in this, doing the similar thing? What are they doing? What new moves are they making? It's like, okay, drown all that out. What do I want to do? So, and I know that's kind of something that you really stand for.
I do. Yeah. It's something that I think I need a lot of space, like mentally and emotionally and just physically. And I think that's kind of a way for me to like feel okay and be like find myself. It's very easy for me to get wrapped up and swept away by other people's feelings and emotions. And that's always been the case. I've been very sensitive to people's energy and opinions too. Like, confusing other people's feelings about things for my own. And I realize that I need to honor that and respect that about myself. And oftentimes it's like, I need to just like be alone for a while and kind of recollect myself. And I find that is, something that I need to do often to find, I always feel like I'm kind of reinventing myself every time that I make art or make music. Like I'm always trying to look for that like childlike excitement that I had when I was a kid exploring music and art and drawing and stuff like that. And I think it's an important thing to do. Like that's what keeps me wanting to keep doing this.
Talking about, you spending a lot of time alone and stuff. When I was doing my research for this, I learned that you are an only child, which I am as well.
I can go pretty deep and into
it. And I can relate, so go as deep as you want.
Cool. Yeah, I'd say Yeah, I was the only child, and I always liked that I was. I mean, I didn't really know what it would have been like otherwise, but I was like, yeah, I don't want siblings. I really appreciated my space. Like I said, that's always been the through line throughout my life. My parents were super supportive. They're artists too. And so I think they have an understanding of the importance of. My dad is a musician and also like graphic designer and illustrator, and my mom is less so on the music side, but more so on like the graphic side and like interior designing. Like that's one of her main passions. She's really good at that. But I felt like it was a good balance to be raised in a family of creatives. They were really supportive of me doing pretty much whatever I showed interest in, as long as it wasn't something that was like mindless or destructive, I suppose. And one of those things was, as an early age, music. I mean, they also played a bunch of different kinds of music when I was a baby. And so I was exposed to a lot of styles and genres ever since before I can remember. And so they enrolled me in piano lessons after, actually, there's this footage that they have that I just recently saw of my dad giving me, like, letting me play with a Casio SK1 sampler keyboard, like one of those small ones from like the 80s, I guess. It was his.
I feel like I had
when
one
I
of those,
was
when I was a little kid too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I think I was like 1 year old.
Dang.
And I've always had that thing.
Wow.
And
Do you still have it
growing
now?
up, it's at their house, but it still exists
cool.
and it still works. And so I was just messing around with that. Like mine, I don't really remember any of this. Apparently, when I was like 3, I think 3 or 4, I started by ear transcribing rhythms and melodies of songs that I heard on TV. Probably very crudely, but my parents were apt and enough to recognize that there was something there. And so they enrolled me in piano lessons, and I kind of picked up on that really quickly and was proficient in that. So I was classically trained from basically age 4, 5 to 13 weekly. And amidst that, I also went to a private school that had a very small, like, from kindergarten to 8th grade, I went to a private school, very small. Yeah, no more than just like 100 students.
Where are
like
you
my
from?
graduating class was like only 10 of us, and half of them was from kindergarten. So I knew them. I'm from New Jersey.
Got it. Okay. East Coast.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, East Coast. And that's a whole other thing
Yeah.
that we could talk about too. Anyway, I was kind of sheltered in that regard. Small private school, and my parents, although very supportive, like did a lot of things for me, essentially kind of like offsetting responsibility or really like speaking for me. And so I feel like socially I was a pretty late bloomer. It wasn't until like freshman year of high school that I really kind of got a sense of what the world is like socially. And that really like
Culture shock.
that really like messed with me. Yeah. It was total culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took until senior year until I actually felt like, oh, okay, I think I know who I am and where I like how I am as a person and how I interact with society. And it's kind of always been every couple years, like I'm realizing like, oh, I'm kind of re-identifying myself in society, and how I hold myself, and how I talk to people. So I think it's an ongoing thing. But to go back to what you're saying, like being an only child, though, I pretty much got a lot of what I wanted, which I'm grateful for. Yeah,
Because as parents and even grandparents, I'm sure if you're close with them, at least for me, like they're like, you're the only one, so we're gonna put all of the love and affection and everything and like gifts and all of that stuff towards you. But almost as I became an adult, and a lot of that ended, and they're like, okay, you're an adult now, you got to take care of yourself, you got to buy your own shit, and you got to buy your own clothes, you got to do all that. Like that was where my culture shock came in. Now I was like, dude, what? Like this has provided for me my entire life. Like now I have to provide for myself. Like what?
yeah, it's almost to a detriment. It's like you're indebted to that. At some point, you're gonna have to figure that shit out. So, yeah, another big kind of I guess, stage for me was when I first started playing shows, especially like out of state. I'm, uh, I never really like I never really like left the East Coast, and I never went to an airport alone before. And the first time that I had to was playing a show and out of state, and it was terrifying. But there was like, it was kind of like a pivotal point where it was like, I need to make a choice. Either I kind of stay this behind the scenes guy, stay comfortable and not play shows, and hopefully, you know, the music career thing works out, or do what I always wanted to do. Not the leaving the state and doing the social thing, but like playing shows and being something that I felt like, basically, I felt that I had a lot of value. I always kind of felt that, and I mean, I'm very critical of myself, but I also am very confident in myself. And I knew that I had to kind of take this leap of discomfort and kind of throw myself into the stranger world for this music thing to really happen in the way that I think I need to do it. Like in the way that I think my value is going to be presented to the world and enriching the world too.
And talking about how, you know, that and you being still obviously an individual on top of being an artist, it almost like it helps you grow as a person too. So I'm sure without music, like you wouldn't have grown into the type of individual that you are today. So
yeah. Well, it's tricky. The music industry is, I was quite naive. I believed everything that everyone said. And
yeah, I can't do that.
met a lot of sketchy and shady people trying to take advantage of me that I was unaware of. Luckily, I didn't like sign any exclusive contracts that signed my rights away for years or anything dumb like that.
Thank God.
So, but it got very close to that. Being in the music industry, and I guess any entertainment industry, like ultimately people are trying to survive, and it feels dangerous. It feels threatening. And that threat kind of just amps up other people's like vigilance to also be threatening or deceitful. And it's kind of just like this. It's kind of just like this under the surface. There's a lot of corruption, is basically what I'm trying to say. And it's important to find good people that you can trust and that, you know, really support you and have your back early on. One of the people that was in a sense kind of like a mentor to me was BT. Not sure if you're familiar with him. I met him pretty much, I only went to college for 1 year, and I met him, and he was a fan of my music, and kind of like I was just starting to play shows in the local scene, and he was kind of like a mentor to me because he was doing it. He was making dope music, all different kinds of music. He didn't box himself into one thing. And just like being around him, he was so joyous and just like excited about stuff that I figured that like he was a good kind of role model for me. And so he kind of just brought a good perspective to my life at the time where this whole industry was really unknown, and I just had no idea like who I'm supposed to be or like what's safe. Yeah. So I'd say having someone who's like that you can look up to and trust, and that also believes in you is really important if you're starting out.
Was music always what you wanted to do from a young, I mean, obviously you started at one and stuff, but did you think of any other type of career path, or was that always kind of a pipe dream, or was that, what did that kind of look like at a younger age?
Yeah, it kind of fluctuated. I was always really into music, but I was told by many different parties that being a musician, like a successful musician, was not practical or sensible. Either you're going to be a music teacher, which like sounded so lame at the time. I am now, and I love it.
Yeah, I guess what you do now, yeah.
Yeah. Or it would be like winning the lottery, like being in a band or like being a musician that got famous and was able to actually make like a comfortable living doing what they do. So it was something that I never like, I felt mixed about it. I was never 100% sold. I was never like, no, you're wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong until much later on. But I was also really into science, and that's kind of like my second passion, like science, physics, how stuff works, chemistry, electronics, electrical engineering, all that sort of stuff. I was kind of toying around with, well, at a young age, I loved taking stuff apart, and I love computers and just like electronics and making circuits and blowing stuff up. And that's just a huge part of me too. I never saw how I never thought about how my passion for music or my interest in music and passion for science could ever converge
Definitely
in
very
such a
much
way.
does, though.
It absolutely
Yeah.
does. And I feel like I was kind of born at the right time to really do this sort of thing, because I was exploring music and science separately for many years. And I remember it was like, I guess I was like a junior in high school when I started to have to think about like, what is my career path? What colleges am I going to go to? And I was kind of torn between like doing some type of engineering or like music. And then there was a point where I was exploring like acoustics engineering, which is kind of like this middle ground. And so it was mainly this, like, I was torn between, could I do music, which is very risky and does not guarantee stability at all, or try to find like my heart and soul in engineering, which I think I could have, which would have been much more, I guess, sustainable or less
stable,
risky.
yeah.
Stable, yeah. And there's a lot of pressure from like guidance counselors and stuff to, lean more towards what's safe.
Especially with modern school, the way that things are luckily changing now, and people are starting to realize that you don't absolutely need to go to college, but you're kind of groomed at a young age to, okay, I got to go to college. Okay, I got to get a good, secure job. And it's like music is none of that. So it is a risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I have students and people and, musicians come to me and ask me a similar kind of thing. Well, to just summarize, like, what the next thing that happened was, so I started making dance music started experimenting at around 13. I was really into the electronic music that I heard, like Eurodance, trancey stuff. Sandstorm was actually, I think, one of the first songs that I ever heard when I was like 8 or 9.
Legendary
and I was
song.
like, I love that.
Yeah.
It was like nothing else at the time, and I just repeated that over and over. And my parents weren't into electronic music. I don't think it felt like something that I had to like shield myself from. So I was like kind of like in the closet loving EDM for several years.
That's how I was, dude.
And
especially with the
really?
the stigma of, and for a little bit of a different angle, but the stigma of what a raver means, and like the drug use and all
yeah.
the negative shit that like people associate with it. I was so afraid to tell my parents, because I come from a Christian background. So like my parents are like, didn't want me to go around any of that kind of stuff. So I very much felt the same way of like, until like one day I just did not give a shit anymore. And I was like, you know what, Mom, this is what I love to do. And this is what I want to do like for the rest of my life. So either like it, love me or not, but this is what I'm doing. So very much.
You got to honor what's true for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. What age was that for you?
Shit, I was probably like 18, honestly. I was an adult already.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I had been listening to, Dead Mouse and shit all the way back in 7th grade. And, I'd been listening to EDM for my whole life. 10 years old, I wanted to go to EDC. I didn't even really like a fan necessarily of like EDM, or like I didn't know that was like the way that I was going to go. But yeah, I remember 10 years old, I was like, I saw an ad for EDC and I was like, I'm not in the EDM scene yet, but I want to do that. Like, it's just a bucket list thing that I want to do. That. So I always had an interest in it. Yeah.
That's so funny. I feel like it's, well, if I don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 25.
25. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm 30.
Okay.
And so for me, I guess that equivalent was like 2007 or so. And I didn't know the term EDM. That wasn't a thing. I didn't know that there was any type of like EDM scene. I just discovered YouTube, and
it just came out. It's 2006 when YouTube launched. Yeah.
Yeah. and watching videos, super low res videos of like people like glow sticking to like hard style. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be involved in whatever that is. And I just assumed that was just like some, European across the sea business that that doesn't exist here or that wouldn't exist here. But slowly, as I started trying to like make that kind of music, showing my friends, I was getting support and doing that. Eventually, my parents were like, what are you doing? Like, what kind of music are you making? We know you're making music. And so I showed them, and they weren't like, it wasn't like I was so afraid that they were going to be like, why are you wasting your time and energy making something like this? But they embraced it, and now they actually enjoy my music, which is I'm super grateful for, because that is a huge, like I said before, it's like I feel very influenced by other people's feelings, particularly about me. So if I felt that they did not approve of what I was doing, that would cause an emotional block and probably not make me feel good doing it. So
I want to get into talking a little bit about because you're such a technical producer. Do you ever find like there obviously, like, for the average listener who aren't producers and stuff, there is, like, I feel like a kind of a threshold where like you take like Mr. Bill for an example, right? He's such a technical producer that like he's almost like a producer's producer. And you've treaded that line very well, where you have subsidiary releases, you have circus releases, you have more listenable type music. Has that been a struggle for you to find the balance between having it like consumer friendly versus like over technical?
I wouldn't think of it as a struggle per se. It's kind of like this back and forth subtle course correction routine, not really routine, but practice that I have with when I'm producing. I feel like I am balancing these energies, these polarizing energies between me, the rational and the logical and like the engineer part of me, and the abstract, intuitive, emotional part of me. And
some would even call that the masculine and feminine energy too, like the masculine more like analytical type, brain focused thing, versus like the emotional feminine type. And you have to, as an artist, you have to find the correct balance between the two.
Absolutely, the left and right brain respectively. And I mean, that the masculine and feminine energy for me is something that needs to be balanced. I mean, they're very apparent in me, and I feel like that's just who I am. I feel very balanced, and I think musically, like being an artist, I can kind of, music is kind of like this process of, or creating art for me is kind of this process of like extruding my soul into physical reality and being able to work with it that way, and then reconsume it and kind of recycle that and refine it that way. I think it's a way for me it's definitely a therapeutic process for me. And so one of the aspects of that is like, I love to break stuff down and understand how things work, like analyze and create with intention and just a scientific understanding. And so there are times throughout me producing music, and also kind of like broader arcs of me, like throughout the seasons, I'll be more into like harder, more technical music and more like emotional stuff. But throughout the process, there is this ebb and flow that happens. A lot of times what I'll do is just, I don't want to make a song. I'm not really feeling any particular like way, but I need some mental stimulus. I want to like explore this new plugin or like learn about some new processing trick. So I'll just do sound design, record a bunch of sounds and stuff, and then just save that for later. And then sometimes when I'm feeling like I kind of want to write a song, I don't want to deal with sound design, I can just use that stuff that I made before and kind of just throw it together. Kind of like, it's basically kind of like using presets and samples from a sample pack, except it's all my own. So it's like on the artistic integrity end, I feel totally fine doing that. And it's cool to kind of merge those sides of me in that way.
Being that you are that type of producer and you do focus on those things, do you think that has a polarizing effect to creating like a fan base? Was it easier or harder for you to create a fan base being that type of producer?
Yeah. I'd say off the bat it was hard. And well, it's nuanced. I was like in the scene, the EDM scene, my first release like 2010, 2011. And I did not really have much of a following at all. I trusted in my own feelings when it came to, well, I'm just going to put out what I like to make and what I feel proud of myself. I started making music before I even thought that I was going to be in the music scene, or like before there was any fans or any of that kind of incentive, that extrinsic incentive to succeed. You know what I mean? And so that kind of helped me create from a place and kind of explore what is true for me musically. And so I just kind of trusted that and just put stuff out. And it was a very slow build, I would say, of fans who came and went. And over time, I kind of just got the attention of the right people at the right time. But it was a frustrating thing for a bit because being in the scene, I was friends with other producers and I just kind of saw them going from nothing and then surpassing me. I'm like what? Like Elenium, for instance, like back in 2014 or so, like he and I would chat. He first started making music then and was like, I'm a huge fan and you're inspirational to me. And, I would share my feedback and thoughts on the stuff that he was making. And then bam, he's like one of the biggest guys just crushing it. And he's an awesome dude. So like I have huge respect for him. I don't quite respect the people who lose themselves in that process. You know what I mean? Like,
what's your opinion on like what people like to call clout chasing? Because for me, I freaking hate it, and I'm not good at it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. But what's your opinion on like the clout chasers? I've heard the argument where like people are like they almost, and I kind of agree with this, where like sometimes you almost kind of need to do that if you're trying to grow. But then I've seen other people that are like against that and have done very well not doing that. So
yeah, I have a lot of philosophical thoughts about this. Personally, it's something that I think is distasteful. I don't think that doing things to... Okay, here's what I think. I don't feel comfortable doing that. Even when I have tried to do that sort of thing, it's like, this feels gross. It feels deceitful to me. It also feels like it's disrespecting myself, ultimately. It's like, I kind of see it as like prostitution. Like, one can argue that there is some kind of inherent benefit from that. Okay, accelerate faster, make money, but to what extent? And I think that line is drawn for each person. What I think overall bothers me, like, I don't mind if someone is going to like for instance, like someone's starting out and they want to play shows and like they are playing like a show for free because of the exposure that it gives them. I mean, everyone values themselves differently. I think it's important to value yourself highly. And what happens, it may take a longer amount of time like it did for me, but I think what happens is in the end, you have more self-respect and you get more respect from others. That's kind of my take on it. What I don't like is like someone's entire career just based off of like, okay, someone who's pretending to be a musician who is like completely ghost produced and all that they have going for them is their curated image of themselves. It's like their entire career is dishonest. And I can't say if there's any objective good or bad in that. That's not for me to say. I know that that's not right for me to do such a thing. And all I hope is that they are bringing some kind of net good to society, and they're not just like a leech or a vampire of people's like insecurities or fantasies or money. Like, fuck that. We don't need any more of that. That's not doing any good.
Yeah. If anything, it's just oversaturating the market with things that, with people that aren't really, they kind of almost like bought their way in, or in a sense, like did certain things to like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Ultimately, I want people to bring some kind of good to
yeah.
society.
100%. I agree. The reason why I asked that is because, I've watched your progression over the time, and even you bringing up BT earlier, and you still have like you were saying, you have a good combination between like the melodic type music, but then also like the super hard technical stuff. But in the earlier phases, you're making more like trancey stuff, and I would say now you're making more of like the melodic rhythm, future bass type stuff. Not saying that you're selling yourself out, 'cause that's not what I'm trying to say at all. But throughout that transition, was that a hard thing for you to do, like conceptualize for yourself with going through the transition between trance and like the newer style of music? And did you get called out for like selling yourself? Like, 'cause I know a lot of people like, they're like, oh, you're just trying to chase clout, when they change into something that might be more hot or popular.
Yeah. And what I realized, like that's happened through multiple stages over the decade. And what I've realized is it's totally subjective. The people that see me as like a bass god, like dubstep all the way, experimenting and doing like pretty stuff or like ambient or experimental stuff, they're like that's not truly you. Like, what are you doing? And I got that especially when I like released my song "Follow You" on Monster Cat back in 2014. I was kind of like paving the way, doing like futuristic dubstep stuff for a while, and then I like lost a bunch of respect from fans, or just lost a bunch of fans because I released something that was like pretty and poppy. But then on the flip side, there are people that feel the opposite, like
because you started making something different.
yeah, like I'll do experimental stuff, and then when they hear me releasing something that's like more, melodic dubsteppy, for instance, they kind of see that as generic. That's probably not their taste or what they're into, and they're like, you should do something that's more like deeper and truly you. I feel like neither side is right. Like these are all just facets of me that I want to highlight because that's what I'm feeling at different times. Sometimes it's just a coincidence that like, okay, here's just a bunch of heavy ass music that just kind of comes out at once. And also my release schedule is not congruent with the music that I make. Like for one, I only release probably like 1 out of every 10 songs that I make or start rather, And then there's labels, and then the whole distribution process, which can totally change the timeline of
completely,
chronologically from when I created it to when it comes out. I mean, I have a song that is going to come out later this year. It's actually like 9 years old.
Holy
shit!
Like
spiced up and I'm finally deciding to put out.
Excellent.
And then there have been other songs where like for instance, a lot, like sometimes I'll get remix opportunities that are kind of like last minute and they need it by the end of the month. And I'm just like, all right, here we go. And then that's like the next song that comes out. Kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just coincides with, here's a string of this style of music. That's just what I was feeling during those times.
Yeah. Something I noticed too about, you as an artist, and, going back to even you being, an only child, and probably it seems like a little bit more introverted as well, is, being more of what I would call like I don't even know if this is the right thing. It's just what came to mind. But like an online producer, you focus a lot on your YouTube, to focus a lot on your streams, and you're not quite as active in the touring circuit. Was that a choice that you made? Was that just kind of who you are as a person? That's kind of what happened, or like how was the trajectory of that? And why do you put more focus on like the online artist portion of your brand than like the touring artist portion of your brand?
Yeah, that's consciously, that wasn't really a deliberate thing.
Okay.
And this kind of goes back to the previous thing that we were talking about. In the beginning, when I finally got management back in like 2014, they asked me like, they were trying to get shows booked for me and whatnot. They were trying to figure out like, what scene do I fit in? I do all this like trancey stuff and I make heavy dubstep. And I was kind of forced to choose, like, okay, who am I going to be? Who am I going as an artist how am I going to present to the world? It's like there's this polarity, and there
It is a
wasn't
business
really.
at the end of the day, and you have to be marketable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Promoters either wanted heavy dubstep or like house and trance. And I kind of struggled with that for a while. I concluded that like, well, there really isn't. I really can't divide myself that way. So I'll lean into, I think, what is a little bit hotter at the time, which is dubstep. And we kind of felt that out playing shows, getting booked for shows. And it seemed like over time, my influence, I think Monster Cat was a huge influence on the internet electronic music scene. And I became a popular artist on Monster Cat. And I think this is my theory. I feel like what happened was I put out music online that was much more popular among like gamers and people that don't go to shows. And that's kind of what got me more established in the online community than the live show community. I think Monster Cat played a big role in that because most of their audience aren't.
Oh yeah, it's a gamer
for
community.
one, yeah, for one, a lot of them especially at the time were minors. They couldn't even go to shows. So, but they got that energy. They got that raw, chaotic Zoomer energy. So they were inspired by it. They were vocal about it. And now we have a pretty strong music scene. I'm just thinking about like Rushdown, for instance, the record label, like Color Bass. That is kind of this new generation sound, which fuses something that fuses the elements of what I've been doing for a while. And a lot of them, like to them, I am a pivotal influencer as an artist.
Pioneer of that kind of sound.
Yeah. One of them, I would say. I mean, I have my influences too, but and now it's really beautiful to see that there can be this, non-binary music that there once wasn't. So
because of that, and I know a lot of we especially streaming revenue, and a lot of people talk about like the monetarial side of touring. That's where a lot of artists make the bulk of their money. How is your finance? How is the back end of, since you are more of like the gamer scene and all that stuff? How are you set up monetarily with that?
At this point in my life, I'd say it's pretty balanced between touring, streaming, and selling music production material. It's like initially, it was mainly just streams, actually. So Monster Cat was like one of the first labels that actually like paid something of substance.
Okay, I don't know
at all.
I don't know their backstory with that, so that's why I asked. That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know specifically how it worked, but I think they were one of the first ones to really capitalize on YouTube monetization, and they had a giant YouTube channel, so it's like they got a lot of streams for that. This was like before Spotify too, and so then when Spotify came along and these other streaming platforms, it was kind of like they were the first ones in to really take advantage of that. I was getting enough income from that to move out of my parents' house and actually like be able to like pay rent and stuff on my own, which was big. Then, playing shows, once I got a management team, they were able to like really up my booking fee, which was also a huge thing for me. Cause like I'm here at super friendly, like, sure, just like I'll play shows for free. I just want you to have and enjoy my music. So it's good to kind of have that structure. For me, it was important for someone else to do that for me because that stuff just got way to my head. Like being a negotiator and being a business person, it's like the antithesis of being a creative. Anyway, and then it wasn't until once I started playing a bunch of shows, then I got touring opportunities to open for like Infected Mushroom, Liquid Stranger, Seven Lions, and then having my own, co-headlining things. I toured with Chime last year, and we're actually working on a tour for later this year. That is a headlining tour. I'm not gonna hype that up too much. Yeah. It's not fully confirmed, but touring is a giant chunk. Because if you think like, okay, these are playing consecutive shows. If I'm playing like 20 shows in a row, all of that income just kind of funnels in. It's like, wow, nothing else really gives you that kind of punch financially. So,
are you monetizing your YouTube?
Balances.
Because I know your YouTube's pretty popular.
Yeah. And then that leads to the whole like selling course material. And that wasn't something that I even really knew. I was thinking of doing like Patreon and stuff back in the day. But then my friend Wyatt, who was a fan of mine first, he wanted to do some private lessons with me and kind of just, he was producing music at the time. This was back in like 2017. And he had the idea of doing like creating courses. He had the foresight that
so it looks
early. He's like, I have foresight that it looks like it's not just going to be like YouTube content that is going to be financially viable. People are moving into courses and masterclasses and online webinars, and that sort of field is where it's really going to pop off. And I was like, okay. And so he like went really deep into online like social media marketing and how to create courses and how to advertise. And that kind of became his passion. And we were kind of sharing information among each other. And then we decided like, let's collaborate. Like, let's actually make a course together and see where it goes. And we've been doing that for about 6 years. And I think we have like I think we have about 6 courses together.
Wow.
And
full length, like full package courses.
Yes.
Okay.
So there are multiple tiers. We have the walkthrough courses, which is like my song Alien Weapon, Was It You, Cryptochrome, and there may be one other. That's kind of like the lower tier. It's pretty cheap. If you get those, you can also get the project files. Like I'm just giving you the whole thing. It's like you can see, I walk through every single step of the process of how I made the song, what's in the song, my mindset. I think it's pretty good value. So there's those, and then there's like the higher tier courses, which is like the Serum Masterclass and the School of Bass, which are much more in-depth, sound design oriented. And I think the School of Bass is like 26 hours of content, video content total.
Damn.
Yeah, we've actually for the past couple years we've been working on the School of Bass version 2, which is basically like it's like a
revamp,
overhaul.
Yeah,
a revamp of the whole thing. And I want this to be something that is like the definitive place for people to not only understand how sound works and how synthesis works, but like think like an engineer and an artist, like kind of merge those and balance those energies inside of you to be the creator and to also be the engineer. Because that's something that I'm really passionate about, and is also, I just love sharing that with people, and I love just feeding off of other people's excitement off of the things that I'm excited about too. It's just like this win-win perpetual machine. And that's thankfully something that that's something that I'm passionate about, that I can also profit from too.
Absolutely. How was this? I haven't talked about this in a while just because we've been out of it for over a year now, but COVID, since you do have different revenues and strong revenue streams set up, were you I mean, obviously you weren't able to tour, but were you financially okay during that time, unlike a lot of artists?
Yeah, I was totally fine. The only thing was I did not tour. I was going to have a tour with Chime during COVID. We were like 2 weeks out from about to go. And I was like really anxious about doing it because I was like, this world is becoming like biologically toxic. I don't know if I'm going to be. And then they were like, okay, there's lockdown. Everyone's shutting down. I'm like, honestly, that's kind of a relief because I don't know if I could have handled that stress mentally.
And especially being
Luckily,
an introvert too. That's something I'm sure that plays a factor in like being around people and stuff. You're like, nah.
yeah. I mean, already like touring already is like anticipating that is kind of dreadful already. It's really fun once I like
Get into it.
Revved up and get into it, and it's great. But so COVID did not, I wouldn't say actually it affected me financially very much. It was actually a good opportunity. It was actually better. It was actually a better year financially for me because for one, I wasn't spending money on like traveling. And secondly, that was when Wyatt and I launched our second course, which just immediately took off. It was a Serum Masterclass course. So COVID for me was fine. I pretty much stay at home all day anyway. The thing that really affected me was, and 2020 was also the year that I released the most music. I mean, I think I released like 21 songs or something. It didn't really hit me until the next year. That was more of like an emotional thing. I felt like I was seeing everyone kind of shift gears from playing shows to doing and finding novel forms of content creation and whatnot. I mean, people are doing like live streams way more, doing like production challenges, creating these communities and stuff. And that to me was very kind of overwhelming. I felt a lot of pressure to like figure out some shit to do to compete against all of these other things that people are doing on the internet.
Had you already set up your YouTube by then?
Yeah,
okay.
my YouTube's been set up for several years.
Yeah, I was like, you have some numbers on there, so I would imagine it's been a while that you've had that set up. So I mean, to a certain degree, you could. I mean, did you leverage your YouTube at all during that time?
Not really. I did some song walkthroughs and stuff, and I like to forward people to like my courses and whatnot. But I mean, YouTube is kind of just like a fun thing for me to make just content that I'm excited about, and also just like push my courses a little bit. That's really all it is for me. I kept feeling like I needed to do something like bigger and more profound, something that I haven't done before. And I was just fully in my head with it to the point where I couldn't feel much anymore. Every day was like, who am I? What am I going to do? Identity crisis. And I think also that was the first time I actually haven't played shows in like, I didn't play a show for about a year and a half since the pandemic, or during the pandemic, which is the longest time ever that I've not played a show. I've usually been playing shows regularly once or twice a month for the past 10 years at the time. And I didn't recognize mentally it was affecting me because I wasn't getting that social nourishment. I stay at home all the time until I have to leave. And then usually when I leave, it's like I'm playing a show or something, I just get bombarded with all of this sociability. And that kind of keeps me good mentally until the next time around. Now, I didn't have that. And I was kind of like losing track of like reality and who I was. And I think I kind of required that validation and that energy from like crowds and stuff to ground me in a way, in a strange way. And like, it felt like I was losing touch with my purpose in life. And so throughout 2021, I like almost made no music, and it was a pretty dark time for me. So the aftermath of 2020 was the lowest point for me. I'd say that was what affected me the most.
How did you pull yourself out of that? And like, how long did it take to get back to like a normal kind of better feeling?
What was that? I feel like there was a pivotal point that got me out of that. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while
since then.
It's June of 23 now, so yeah.
Honestly, one of the things was, I think, just letting go and accepting that like I have nothing to prove. I've been putting the pressure on myself to prove something extrinsically. Like I felt like I needed to do something as profound as what I was seeing my peers doing, whether that's like starting a label or like creating an album or something like that. And I had all these ideas, but nothing was actually coalescing properly. It was just too chaotic. And it wasn't until I just felt like I just wasn't giving myself a break. Even though I wasn't actually creating anything,
Your brain is still going.
I wasn't giving
stress,
myself a break. Yeah. So I was currently just stressing myself out with that. And it wasn't until I accepted my fate, so to speak, and started focusing on being a person more than being an artist and obsessing over my identity as an artist, connecting with people that I care about more, having experiences that are not related to music
That's
or the
so
music
important.
scene.
So important to do things outside of. What do you enjoy doing outside of the music stuff?
So I like creating art, visual art. I like writing too. I like journaling, conceptualizing. Like I feel like I get like I like philosophizing, I suppose. I guess just like random revelacious insights of life and reality. I really love exploring like the nature of reality. I like discovering different types of science, like alternative scientific theories, than like the atomist physics, the atomist physical model. I'm into I like Eastern philosophies, and all of these things I'm trying to like, I guess, form my own unique understanding of like what is life, what is the nature of reality, what is God, my higher self, consciousness, all of these things. Just today, I actually did this like hour-long breathwork video seminar that was unbelievable, like DMT breakthrough level intensity. So I feel amazing today because of that.
Well, thanks for doing that before the interview. No.
I'm so glad it timed out. It was seriously a last minute thing. But so stuff like that every day for the past, I guess, I've been making it a regular routine to, like, when I wake up within the first hour, go outside without sunglasses and get sunlight in my eyes. And what I've been doing is taking walks and listening to music, and it's been really emotionally cathartic for me. It's been an experience where I feel like I'm actually getting into my body. I'm kind of like merging my mind into my heart and the rest of my body, and I think that's really important.
I love that.
Especially for people who are creatives and live sedentary lives where they're just sitting all the time and kind of looking at a screen. It's like we're kind of just disembodied.
Gotta move.
Like I feel like so much is mental. Yeah. And I think there's this correlation between like really being your full self and being able to deliver authentically and being whole. I think that's what it comes down to, is like being whole. And for me, it's very easy for me to disembody, so to speak. I feel like I'm just like a floating head a lot of the time. It's hard for me to get into like deeper emotions and like kind of like that heartfelt intuition. Music is something that is a way for me to explore that, but in other areas of life, it's very difficult for me to, like in relationships and in like I guess knowing like, am I healthy? So I'm trying to like get more into my body and kind of harness the instinctive energy.
You're using, walks as an example. I go to the gym at least 4 days a week. I didn't last week because I was sick, but at least 4, sometimes 5 days a week. And on the days that I go to the gym and I have a lot of work to do afterwards, like I'll go first thing in the morning, I'm way more focused. I'm way more like I eat what I'm supposed to. Like everything just goes better throughout my day if I get that like hour of exercise in the morning or that little bit of sunlight, like it makes the biggest difference. Yeah.
That'll do it. It's almost like you can kind of start to sense this flow of your life and of your body. And there are these processes that, if you're just all mental all the time, there's really no like, I kind of think of it as like timekeeping. These cycles of your body are not congruent and you fall out of alignment, so to speak. And that can cause a lot of problems. I mean, I think it comes down to self-care. It's like doing exercise is a great thing. Not only is it good mentally and emotionally, and the reason that it is good mentally and emotionally is because on a physiological level, you are regulating these chemicals in your body. It's detoxifying you. It's kind of allowing your body to really like expand and breathe and, breathe with energy.
And it gets
so to
your
speak,
endorphins going too, which is one
Oh
of the most
yeah,
powerful
that's
drugs
huge.
that's in your body naturally.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think there's really no better way to get in touch with that than doing like doing physical exercise. Something I've come to conclude recently is stress, whether that be physical, mental, or emotional, is healthy when it is short-term and transient. That's kind of, it strengthens the immune system. That's, it's like it disciplines the mind, and it also allows you to be more like, I feel like it allows you to just be more emotionally authentic. If you allow yourself to experience that stress, the problem, and I think a huge problem with this culture, the world's culture right now, is it's kind of like there's a lot of pressure to just stay in a chronic state of stress, like kind of push the shit that does not seem to be serving your agenda aside. And what ends up happening is, okay, we're not physically moving. We're dwelling on things that aren't true real life threats. We get stressed.
No one's gonna die. Relax.
A stress response is good. Exactly. That's why we have the stress response. Our bodies are like, thousands of year old, probably more, 100,000-year-old architecture running a brand new operating system that is modern society, essentially. And it's like, well, we have not caught up instinctively. Like our evolution physically has not caught up with our technological evolution, so to speak. And so it's really important to get in touch and understand your body and what we are. So like we have these chronic stressors that are not serving us. We worry about shit. What is the purpose of worry?
Well,
that doesn't
zero.
actually do us. If we're not taking action, then it's not doing us any good. It's just poisoning us, and we're falling out of alignment with ourselves, with our different bodies, so to speak.
Yep.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. These aren't congruent anymore, and a lot of times it manifests as illnesses, physical illnesses, and mental illnesses.
Dude, I've
too.
noticed that when I'm like extra stressed out about something for some reason, or if I have like something that's like extra on my plate for the week, or like out of like normal like routine, like that's literally what happened to me. And I got a head cold last week. Like I got sick because of and I was like, dude, like, and it was just at that moment where like I could physically get through what I needed to do, but it was just out of the ordinary and like extra stress. And I think my body was just like, nope, not doing that right now. We're shutting down. So yeah, very much relate to that.
It's a real thing. Your emotional state, your mental state affects your emotional state, affects your physical state, and vice versa.
Yeah. What advice would you have for new producers that are coming up that are stressed out about the future, are stressed out about them not making progress, are stressed out about all the stressors that new producers face, and even people at your level, I'm sure, face? What advice would you give to those people?
It's a really good question. It's kind of a tough one too, because I think each person interprets that a little bit differently. And I think for each person, there are different requirements. I think it's important to be honest with yourself. I know there's a lot of people that are afraid of like getting into a risky career because of money. It's like, how can we support ourselves if there's so much competition? How can I stay doing what I'm passionate about if what I'm passionate about doesn't seem to resonate with anyone, or there's no audience for it? That's a huge in itself. That's a huge stressor, but that's a huge problem that I get asked a lot. And it's tough because I wish I could give advice curated to each person, but I really don't know anyone like intimately to really answer that. But something that I believe that I've been experimenting with and kind of exploring more is your monetary worth is linked to your self-worth. And for instance, if you think of yourself as like a shitty person, or just like not good, or if you don't love yourself, if you can't find that love, or if you're just self-abandoning, then you're not going to be, for one, open to opportunities that are actually going to be like prosperous for you. I know people who are afraid to ask for more money because they're anxious that someone else is going to say that, no, you're not worth that much.
Just because they think they're not worth it in their own minds. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all it is. It's like they just don't have that self-value. Their self-value and their self-worth is not high enough to go through the motions and present themselves with opportunities to earn what they deserve. I mean, that's the thing. It's like we earn what we deserve for the most part, and what we deserve is subjective to how we feel about ourselves, how we treat ourselves. Do we love ourselves? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we honoring our existences to the fullest extent that we can? You know, are we being honest with ourselves? Are we being honest with other people? And I feel like all these things kind of contribute to like just feeling fulfilled altogether. Success is a subjective thing. Like if you're just constantly comparing yourself to other people, like social media basically just curates showing, you know, what other people think of as success. You know, everyone's killing it. You look on social media, it's like, damn, this person is way more attractive than me. Damn, this person is like way more, is richer than me, doing all this cool stuff. It's like, well, for one, that's kind of the things that are popular on social media. That's kind of the purpose, you know, to feed you this shit. That's all noise. Don't compare yourself to where anyone else is at.
I've heard someone else say this, but don't compare your step 5 to someone else's step 10. Like you're just at different points in your journey. Yeah.
Same thing. I also talk to people who feel like they're too old to succeed, or like too old to be like in the music scene, which I think is total bullshit too. Yeah. It's like all you're doing, I think you're subconsciously feeding yourself things that are triggering your insecurities, and you're letting that fear drive your life. I mean, this is the thing. It's like I used to think that all of my problems would be solved once I was able to make enough money from doing music to live and like to have my basic needs met. And once that happened, and once I surpassed that, I realized, oh, whoa, now I can see that it wasn't money at all. It's all of these other things, and it's like all of these intrinsic things. I have all of these things that I need to work through as an individual. This really does not have anything to do with what's happening outside. I think your external experiences in life is a reflection of what's happening internally. And so if you can start with yourself, find self-care routine, surround yourself with people that make you feel good and that also support you loving yourself. That's huge. And I think once you get the ball rolling with that, you'll find that, for one, maybe you'll completely reevaluate what your purpose is, or what your career path is. You know, a lot of people feel like they don't know whether or not like something that they think they're interested in is really the thing that is going to bring them fulfillment to do. You know, it may make sense at that time in their life. You know, they may be excited about something, or their friends, or they may see someone else on social media doing something, and they're like, I'm very passionate about that because that's the thing that has excited me the most out of anything else that I could think of. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end all. So I think it's important to also be open to the possibility of that changing. You know, we're always in flux. Our identities are never fixed, you know, and that's also, it's a double-edged sword. That's also what's beautiful about being alive. It's like I may not be, I mean, it's unlikely at this point for me, but I may not be doing like electronic dance music in the next 5 years or more or less, and I'm okay with that fact as long as I'm staying true to myself.
Yeah, staying authentic. Absolutely.
Yeah, staying authentic.
What you were just talking about, you know,
comparisons and social media, and how social media is I think that's it's such a prevalent thing in everyone's life, is just comparing yourself, whether you're a musician or just a person. Someone's better looking than you, or you see models or whatever it may be. I think it's important that when you are, using social media and stuff, for me, I've developed discipline around that. Every Sunday, I literally don't even open a social media app. And like certain things like that, with like actually having self-discipline built in around social media, is very, very helpful.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, I find that is something I want to emphasize as well, is social media is deceptively dangerous, especially for people who don't feel like they really have a grip on their life and their path. It's deceptively dangerous. I mean, it's a tool, just like any tool. It's just a very powerful tool. So something that I find for my own sake is like, if I wake up and I too quickly get on social media without me actually experiencing myself in my physical world, my whole day is kind of fucked. Like, I always feel like I'm anxious about shit. I feel like I'm behind in some way, because social media it's addictive. It produces a lot of dopamine, and already, we have a limited amount of, I kind of think of it as like we have like a limited amount of dopamine per day. It's like, let's use it for the things that we value and that we actually want to get done first and foremost.
I've replaced my morning social media scroll with reading a book. I've put a book purposely next to my bed so that instead of my knee-jerk reaction going to my phone, no, screw the phone. I'm picking up my book and reading a chapter in the book first.
Oh, that's huge. I applaud you of doing such a thing.
I very much struggled with, so it's a big step for me, but I'm so glad that I started doing that.
Yeah, having that kind of routine, self-control routine. It's like you can't just remove something that you're addicted to and it be like, okay, everything is fine. No, it's important to replace that with something that also has gratifying potential. It's like addiction, it's in itself is not inherently good or bad. It all comes down to like, is this serving something that you value?
Well, we are almost at an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. This has been an amazing conversation. Good. Thank you so much for your time today. Wrap up questions.
Absolutely,
though.
Justin.
What is coming up for you? What are some of your goals for, this year and into the future?
Yeah. So I have a huge album that I'm very excited about.
Excellent.
That is coming out, should be around October or so.
Sweet.
On a label that I feel good about.
Excellent.
So I'm very excited about that. That's really the main thing that's been on the forefront of my mind for a while. And hopefully a tour.
Excellent.
To coincide with that.
And where can the listeners follow you? It's AU5 official, correct?
My tags are a little messy across the socials, but AU5music.com. On YouTube, you can follow me, AU5 Music, AU5_official on Instagram. And just search AU5 Music.
It'll come up, yeah. Awesome. Final question. If there's one piece of advice you could give your younger self, when you first started producing, what advice would you give your younger self?
I'd say it'd be something along the lines of honor your feelings. They're valid and they have value, and they are going to they're going to align your life with what you want. And I wish I did that. I wish I figured that out earlier on in life, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Absolutely.
You have a good one with you.